How optimistic are you about where this goes from here? Because a huge amount of joy yesterday to see the living hostages released and prisoners released back in the other direction. But the big question now is, can there be a formal peace agreement? How optimistic are you?
Well, what happened yesterday was the opening of the door to a possibility for peacemaking. It is not, though, peace itself. In order to have the opportunity to move beyond the release of the hostages, the introduction of humanitarian assistance, the presence of a ceasefire, all critical elements of what I call the day before, you've now got to grapple with the very difficult tasks of the day after. Disarmament of Hamas, further Israeli withdrawals, the introduction of a stabilization force drawn presumably from regional and extra-regional Muslim and Arab parties, and then the challenge of providing a political frame, a political vision for administration and then governance of Gaza. Now, all of that is outlined in very bold marks in the 20-point plan, but the details have to be done. So you ask me, am I optimistic? What would make me more hopeful would be to see the sustained attention of President Trump, and it's going to take his sustained attention in order to move this process further, and the sustained and unified position of critical Arab and regional states like Turkey, UAE, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt applying pressure and constraint to Hamas. Were I to see that, I would be much more encouraged and possibly even optimistic. But that has yet to be shown to be anything other than a possibility, not a reality.
So who needs to take the lead on this? I mean, you talk about the sustained attention of Donald Trump, and he's obviously left the region now. He's declared peace in the Middle East. What do you need to see happen next? What's the next step here in your view?
Well, look at what's happening on the ground in just these last 24, 48 hours. Hamas is brandishing arms and uniforms, clearly demonstrating, challenging to the world, to the Arab states, as well as to the United States and Israel, that they remain a potent force, an armed force, capable of presenting themselves as an effective controlling element on the ground. And that has to be countered. The way to counter it is, of course, the introduction as rapidly as possible of this interim stabilization force. That's what it's designed to do. And the beginnings of the offered beyond just humanitarian assistance of a different vision of the future to the people of Gaza. Look, Israeli senior military over the course of the last year and a half have made the point that the kinetic conflict with Hamas achieved its objectives, largely speaking, late summer of last year. What was needed was a political vision to counter Hamas as a political movement. That vision is outlined in very sparse terms in the 20-point plan. It must be made a reality if, in fact, Hamas is to be ultimately eliminated as the potent force that remains in Gaza.
How concerned are you about Benjamin Netanyahu's intentions now? He's facing a huge amount of internal political pressure inside Israel. There are concerns that within the plan as it stands, there is the possibility of the Israeli Defense Forces re-entering the region if it's felt that any other force was not doing an adequate job. Do you think Benjamin Netanyahu wants peace to happen?
I would call attention to the repeated comment by President Trump, both in front of the Knesset yesterday and in Sharm el Sheikh, or rather today, that the war is over. Do you understand? The war is over. That message is addressed to one individual, Benjamin Netanyahu. And I think the prime minister must be extremely sensitive to the fact that President Trump, who has extraordinary, unparalleled agency at this moment with respect to Israel,
Mm.
extraordinary stature, that to go back to war, to fighting, under anything less than the clearest possible motivations would bring about a reaction from the president that is certainly not useful to the prime minister. So no, I'm not worried about that. What I'm worried about is Hamas. and the difficult challenge here of confronting Hamas. My assessment is Hamas agreed to this first phase, the living hostage release. It's provided 4 bodies right now. It's not clear how many more bodies of deceased hostages it has knowledge of and access to. That's going to be a critical factor for Israeli reaction. But I think Hamas made the judgment that the hostages had become a burden, a vulnerability for them. But the release of the hostages by no means signaled Hamas's willingness to concede defeat in this combat as a movement, to give up its arms, or to give up the pretense of controlling events on the ground. That remains to be done.
I mean, that just seems like an impossible question to answer, though. I suppose your concern is the one that everybody shares. Who can play a realistic defining role in ensuring that Hamas does disarm? I mean, is there a question about Iran here?
I don't think Iran is a critical factor at this moment. It's clear the Iranians certainly agreed with Hamas that it was now a problem for them to hold the hostages, and they were better off releasing. But Iran's not the critical factor here. It's Hamas operating on its own calculations as to what gives it the greatest chance of surviving as a movement, outweighting, attriting over time, Israeli pressure, international pressure. Who can shape a different decision from Hamas? It's the combination I referenced at first, the combination that got us here. It's the United States, the president, it's critical Arab and regional players, all acting in concert, each applying their influence where it is best used, best necessary, most received.
So the big question then remains: what incentive can be provided to Hamas? What route out or route towards a different state of existence can be presented to Hamas? In your view, what would be most successful in ensuring that Hamas can be
Mhm.
disarmed and can be contained?
A combination of 3 factors. First, continued strong, explicit messaging from those 3 key Arab parties, Qatar, Turkey, Egypt, the 3 parties remaining in the Arab world with whom Hamas had any formal ties or ability to move to, that the game is up, that Hamas now has to move to the next step, which is disarmament, which is ceding governance, and that there will be consequences in an Arab sense if that's not done.
Mm.
The second element that's critical here is the president has to underscore that if Hamas refuses to disarm, if Hamas balks at carrying out the terms of its agreement, that Israel then will indeed have the ability to go back to combat with all of the consequences that means in terms of Palestinian opprobrium for Hamas. The third element, the rapid introduction of both a stabilization force that confronts challenges, not in a kinetic sense, but in a physical space sense, Hamas's ability to be the only force present on the ground, and the movement of that political Palestinian administration under an international cover and international supervision of the body, the International Peace Board, Tony Blair's role. All of that makes a construct which progressively diminishes Hamas's ability to act. But is it a guarantee? Is it an assurance that Hamas will not continue to balk, to find ways to maneuver? No, not at all. But it gives a greater chance that Hamas over time can indeed be diminished and ultimately eliminated, and nothing else will do that.
David Satterfield, many thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you.